Alrighty, so I asked you guys to give me your questions, sports and non-sports alike, and you took to Twitter and did so. And for that, I thank you. I'm going to try and answer as many of these questions as I can. So let's go ahead and we'll kick off with the sports-related ones first. Boondock Javi asks, when will we see Mitchell Trubisky's breakout game? Well, I can tell you this much based off of what I've seen. That breakout game isn't happening anytime soon. It's not happening under the John Fox administration. So I don't know. And it's one of these things, it's really hard to make any type of real assessment or judgment of Trubisky one way or another because they're not giving the kid a real chance to do anything. And you can hide behind the, well, they want to run the ball and play defense and win games that way. But long term, that's not how you're going to get back to a competitive point. You're going to get back to a really competitive point by having a young franchise quarterback to build the entire operation around. But I don't see it coming anytime soon. How can he? He's not going to get enough chances to throw the ball to break out of anything. Blaze in 1978 asks, what is Sam Bradford's future? Is he a backup, transitional starter somewhere else? Does he stay in Minnesota? Honestly, at this point in time in 2018, I see him with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Potentially replacing Blake Bortles or maybe competing with Blake Bortles for the starting job. It just seems like that would be the fit there. Again, though, for the Minnesota Vikings, how stupid do you have to feel for giving up a first-round pick for Sam Bradford? I don't care what the spin is. I don't care what anybody else says. That was fucking stupid. Ha ha ha. I told you so. Gives up a first-round pick for Sam Bradford. How stupid. Not Jeff Schlegel. My ego asked me, what will the Colts do with Andrew Luck, Jacoby Brissett, and their top pick? It'll be really interesting to see this offseason what Chris Ballard does. First and foremost, you got to fire Chuck Pagano and the staff. I think that's a given. After that, I don't know that they're going to do anything with them. I think what they might do is obviously keep Andrew Luck. I think they might keep Jacoby Brissett another year. Because you could say, well, you could trade off Brissett and get some assets. What type of assets are you really going to get for Jacoby Brissett at this point? And furthermore, what guarantee do you have physically long-term that Andrew Luck is going to be able to hold up? Because the past couple of years, he's shown you no ability to do so. So at this point in time, Jacoby Brissett, to me, honestly, Vinny, feels like they've got to keep him as a security blanket, as insurance in case Andrew Luck doesn't come back and play the same or can't stay healthy. And as far as their top pick, from the Colts standpoint, it would make a world of sense if you got a quarterback desperate team and the Colts pick was high enough for them to peel back, because they're in such a bad way still offensively and defensively. That one draft and one marquee pick is not going to change the fortune of the organization. They should be in a position to try and accumulate as many picks as possible. Purple Press Box. Will the Bears finish with a better record than the Packers? Well, at the time of this recording, the Bears are 3-4 and the Packers are 4-3. It is possible. I don't want to fully buy into that yet, but it is possible. There's only one game difference. They still have to play each other later in the year. It could happen. And imagine if it did. That'd just be weird. Southly Fee Gold. Why the hell aren't the Falcons using Julio Jones more? That is a great fundamental question that goes back to Super Bowl 51, does it not? You have Julio Jones. I don't care what your game plan says. If your game plan doesn't say target Julio at least 10 times a game, then your game plan is retarded. Your game plan is not worthy of seeing live action. I think it's a reflection of Steve Sarkisian. Frankly, I think in some ways it's a reflection on Matt Ryan, and they're not particularly good ones. I get matchups and I get different things, but sometimes you just look at Julio Jones and you say, that's a man amongst boys. Let's go feature the man amongst boys and trust in him to make big-time plays. It's that simple. Keys 10, favorite NBA players to watch. Right now, my favorite NBA player to watch is probably Antetokounmpo, the Greek freak. I mean, my God. And what's scary about this dude, he hasn't even reached his mid-20s yet. He's incredible. Just absolutely incredible. From a pure seeing the game played at the highest level, I still get a lot of enjoyment out of watching Steph Curry and Kevin Durant and LeBron James, even though I have feelings about different players that I don't always like everything about them. From an on-the-court thing, there can be a lot of things to watch. So they can be guys that I enjoy watching. But right now, my number one guy, my favorite guy to watch, when I do get the chance to watch him, I make sure I do, is the Greek Freak. Just a stud beast. It's freaky. Andrew Harrington. Should the Steelers trade Martavis Bryant? For what? What are they going to get from Martavis right now? He hasn't produced much this year. There's a reason that they're not going to him much. There's a reason they're yanking him off the field for Juju Smith-Schuster and Eli Rogers. Furthermore, you're talking about a guy that's, one failed drug test away from a lifetime ban? There's no point in trading him because you're not going to get anything for him. Jules on the mic asks, does Josh Rosen's character concern you? A little bit. But it could be one of those things that it's overblown. And much ado about nothing, but some of the things he's said in the past have kind of, other reports that you hear make you go, But I think there are on-the-field concerns, too, outside of just the character concerns. So, still a long ways to go before I make that final determination on him, though, honestly. James Gem Show. Would you agree that Aaron Rodgers is the greatest of all time at the quarterback position and Brady helped create the greatest franchise of all time? James Gem, I find this very curious for you to ask that particular question because, number one, wouldn't the Packers be the greatest franchise of all time based off of titles and based off of the different decades that they've been at the top throughout the history of the NFL and talking about longevity and everything else, especially with the dry spells of the 70s and 80s? I mean, the Packers, historically, throughout the entirety of the NFL, are the greatest franchise there is. Brady and the Patriots with Belichick maybe have the greatest 15-year era. But in terms of length of franchise, the Packers are the best. Much as a pain to me to say it. And I think Rodgers is the best quarterback in the game today, but I still think at this moment the best quarterback of all time is Tom Brady. So I don't agree with that assessment. Caseman 234. What should the Nationals do in the offseason? Well, the first thing I would have said is to not panic and fire Dusty Baker, but they already did that. I actually feel kind of bad for Dusty because I think he's getting a raw deal here. With that said, I know they have to make a decision on a couple of their bullpen guys like Kinsler and Albers. They got to make a decision on whether they're going to re-sign Jason Worth or not, which they probably won't. You really want to know what the Nationals need to do? They really need to load up and make one last run on it because there's a very good chance Bryce Harper's gone after 2018. Blowing Hooker 69. Over under on the years Patrick Mahomes sits behind Alex Smith. I think it's one. If I'm not mistaken, Alex Smith's contract is up after this year. Maybe if the Chiefs got to like the Super Bowl, they would feel the pressure to give Alex Smith the franchise tag for a year. But I think the over-under right now is 1 year because ultimately when the Chiefs come up short in the playoffs, and they will, you will have reached a point in time where it no longer makes any sense for Alex Smith to be the starting quarterback of the Chiefs. It will be time to see if Patrick Mahomes can take you to the next level and let Alex Smith go somewhere else where he could be a transitional starter. Again, thinking of a team like the Jacksonville Jaguars, they would be desperate for a guy like Alex Smith, and they could make some noise. Not Super Bowl noise, but they could make some decent noise as they tried to find their own young quarterback. But I think it's 1 year is the over-under. Luke Perez 17. How would you try to fix the dumpster fire of the Bulls? It is very simple. Since you can't change the owner just like that, Gar Forman and John Paxson must be fired. And until those two things happen, nothing's going to change about that horrible-ass dumpster fire of an organization, period. So we've answered some of the sports questions this go around. Let me dive into some of the politics and non-sports related questions and see how this goes. Free speech is why it kicks us off. Do you agree with universal health care? And if so, what model would you like to see? The Canadian version, the UK, Australia? When it comes to health care, I hear some of the talking points, and it allows me to know who's really, truly, actually at least somewhat educated on the issue and who isn't. And it's not an easy fix no matter what. Talking about over 16% of our nation's economy, there is no easy answer. The ultimate answer is universal health care, and it should have always been. But even going down that path, it still doesn't deal with how do you administer it, what happens to these massive insurance companies, now of all these hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of employees. If you take private insurance completely out of the marketplace, what happens to those people? What happens to those jobs? I mean, there are a lot of things to consider here. But ultimately, I look at it like this. To the people that say, well, universal health care is socialism and I don't want to pay for somebody else's health care. Okay, fundamentally I get it, but it's a dipshit argument. And the reason it's a dipshit argument is because if we go back to the way it was before, when we have many millions more people not being covered by insurance, what do you think happens? Can these doctors, these hospitals, deny these patients? A, if you're okay with them denying them and potentially allowing people to die because they don't have health insurance, then we have bigger, more fundamental human issues at stake here. But B, if they do have to admit them, which of course they do, and then they have to take care of them and provide the quality of care we would expect from an alleged first world country, that means somebody at some point in time is going to have to pay that bill. And imagine that. If that person is financially incapable of paying for hundreds of thousands of dollars in procedures because their freaking kid got cancer at 6 years old, who do you think is going to pay for that? You still ultimately are, because those costs are going to be passed on to you because they have to eat this loss some way and they got to compensate for it somewhere else. So the whole premise of the argument people make about, I don't want universal health care because it's socialism and I don't want to pay for somebody else's crap. Well, the free market bullshit that isn't even free market bullshit to begin with is complete bullshit, and you're still ending up paying for somebody else's crap. It's dumb. Furthermore, if you want to get back to talking about the choice and the this and the that, again, it's idiotic. It's not grounded in a real understanding of the fundamental issues at stake here. Furthermore, if we're talking about, well, we want to go back to competition, going back to the old way of doing things also leads to insurance underwriting, which then would still lead to millions more people being ultimately kicked off of their health insurance, because now you can see your premiums skyrocket, your out-of-pocket costs skyrocket because you're at higher risk, because you have previous health issues, pre-existing conditions, as we know. It's one of these things. As a country, you would think it would be one of these things that we could agree on, like we would be better than it. We could say, okay, we provide health care for all of our people, and let's argue about the other shit. But we are so stupid and so idiotic as a country that we can't even come together on this. We can't even agree on this. It's just so ridiculous. And for the people that sit there and say this and say that, one of the major problems is because you have to go through your employer, and often cases to get the employer provided health insurance, it does limit the competition. That is true. But think about it from a business example. And I'll use my personal example here. Through my company, I'm required to carry health insurance. I get the basic, nothing special. Child support says I have to cover some type of health insurance for myself and the kid, so that's what I do. But you're only getting the basic out of me, okay? So my premium's about $160 a month for myself and the kid. The premium, not really bad is the way I look at it. A lot of other people wish they had that type of premium. Some people may have lower. But when I look at that yearly breakdown, and I think the yearly breakdown this year, it's actually about $150 a month. So I think I was paying about $1,800 for the year for my health insurance premiums. My employer was footing over $9,000. So they're going 5 times, almost 6 times above what I'm putting in. So think about, for the company that I work for, literally the hundreds of thousands of employees that they have to do that for. I mean, that's why so many jobs leave this country. When people want to talk about its regulation, they're retarded. When they want to say that it's wages, they're idiots, because it's not the statutory wage of this person makes $15 an hour and I can have somebody over there make it for 3 or 4. No, it's the fact that this person that gets paid $15 an hour, you also provide a certain level of medical coverage if you want to get any type of quality employee at all. You're providing dental coverage, you're providing other types of benefits, you're pitching in for some type of 401k share. It's all of these things. Ultimately, there's no easy solution other than the fact if we can't agree on universal health care and figure it out from there, we have some major, major issues here. I think we have more complexities in trying to solve it, because of some of the infrastructure we have built in. I mean, we have a sickness society. Why do you think there's a freaking drugstore and pharmacy every block or two you go? Every grocery store, every Walmart, Target has a freaking pharmacy. Why? Because our for-profit pharmaceutical and healthcare industry creates that dependency. So going up against that is going to be a monster. And I don't know if it's going to happen in our lifetime. It needs to. It should. If we want to be the advanced, civilized society that we pretend to be, that's what it should have always been. And to sit there and use the socialist argument is just a lack of fundamental understanding of what really goes on, period. California EST. What should Democrats be looking for in a presidential candidate? Not Hillary Clinton. Not Hillary Clinton. Not somebody that will feed right into Donald Trump, because I promise you, Donald Trump effectively created a narrative about his opponent once, and don't dismiss that he could do it a second time, because as the incumbent, he has an even greater advantage than people want to give him credit for. Like the media and everybody else is going to talk about how he's a sitting duck, he's a lame duck, and he's automatically going to lose in 2020. And that is exactly the type of dismissive attitude that will get him elected again in 2020. You have to look at Hillary and look at everything that she was and find somebody that was great in everything that she wasn't. Chief Razorback, who should be the top 5 Democratic candidates to run in 2020? A lot of people are going to point to Bernie. I say no. A lot of people are going to point to Elizabeth Warren. I also say no. For my own reasons, and I think I've talked about them before. That party needs to go in a different direction. Some of the big names you're going to hear of in particular will be Kamala Harris and Cory Booker. But I don't think Cory Booker is going to be as beloved by progressives as people might make him out to be, similar to Kamala Harris. Cory Booker's also got the issue of he's not married, and believe me, that becomes an issue. Kamala Harris being a woman and being a multi-ethnic woman, there is definitely an appeal there to the base. There would be an appeal in a grander scale. But then there is also that issue of Trump already beat one woman. Couldn't he just do the same thing for a second one? The darkest of dark horse candidates to me would be Joseph Kennedy III. You talk about a young guy with the Kennedy name, so you've got that Kennedy star power there. The fact is it's got to be somebody different, and it's got to be somebody that can really galvanize people, galvanize that base, draw in moderates and independents. I've heard some talk about Deval Patrick. I think that time has passed. Cory Booker is a Barack Obama knockoff. Sorry, he is. Kamala, I don't know if she's quite ready for prime time yet. You could say Joe Biden, but then he's never been great as a presidential candidate himself. And then you've got the age thing, and if I'm going to knock Bernie for it, I most certainly have to knock somebody like Joe Biden for it. I could say Michelle Obama. You're going to hear all types of names, though. You're going to hear Zuckerberg. You're going to hear Cuban. You're going to hear Oprah. You're going to hear all types of things. You know, Oprah could potentially have a chance because you're going to go the anti-Donald Trump in a lot of ways. And Oprah, being that strong, powerful black woman, would be a formidable opponent for a Donald Trump. But in a more traditional sense, it's probably Cory Booker, Kamala Harris, maybe somebody like Amy Klobuchar if you're trying to win some of the Rust Belt and Midwestern states. She comes from Minnesota, very, very favorable with progressives in a lot of ways, I believe. So she keeps Minnesota. She probably would win Wisconsin. She'd probably help win Michigan. She could probably play well in Pennsylvania. Somebody like that. I think you're going to see a huge problem for that party as we get close to 2020 is, do they go down the Bernie, Elizabeth Warren type of path? The Sherrod Brown, Jerry Brown. I can't believe 80-something-year-old Jerry Brown. They're talking about running for president. Give me a break. If that's what happens, then that represents everything that's wrong. You might hear something like Kristen Gillibrand. But to me, I look at my ultimate dark horse is Joseph Kennedy III. Otherwise, it's probably Booker or Kamala. That's my thought. Eric Doug is Doug 1. Trump or Hitler, you have to choose one. Now, come on. Trump is a bad president. He is a horrible leader. He's an egomaniac. He is a narcissist. He hasn't, as of this time, literally gassed millions of people to death. He did not start a world war yet. We need to stop with these Hitler comparisons because, frankly, if we are being completely honest, Hitler is not even anywhere near the worst historical leader of all time. There are so many others through this world's history that were worse than Hitler. And I think of a contemporary of his, Stalin, was far worse to his own people and other people too. But it's because of the Nazi narrative and the fact that the Americans fought the Nazis in World War II. And Hitler was a horrible guy. Let's stop comparing American presidents to Hitler. Let's stop comparing George W. Bush to Hitler, Barack Obama to Hitler, and yes, even Donald Trump to Hitler. I think that's inherently unfair, and we should be better than that. I should be able to knock Donald Trump and his policies, his ideas, his philosophical views without resorting to this type of comparison. It is beneath us, and we should be better. We're not, but we should be. Georgian Fulio, what do you know about Romania? What do I know about Romania? Does saying Nadia Comaneci, does that mean anything? Obviously, we know about Transylvania, Ceausescu. He met a bad end in '89, didn't he? So a little bit. And if you gave me more time, I could think of more. Caleb Henderson, what was the worst boss you ever had? There's a dude I worked for a few years back when I was still in Iowa. It was a place called Mud Advertising. I've had some bad bosses. He was probably the worst. I remember one time we were sitting there and we were having a discussion, and then just kind of all of a sudden out of the blue, he asked me if I wanted to go. What do I mean? I said, what do you mean, do you want to go? He said, you want to fight? You want to fight right now? And he wasn't trolling. He wasn't playing. He was like dead on serious. He was literally threatening me to a fight. During the middle of a conversation, mind you, he was threatening me to a fight. And he was one of course, these MMA dojo tough guys. I mean, he was a legit tough dude. But how tough are you if you're sitting there threatening somebody that reports under you? I mean, that was the work environment. I've had other bad bosses, but you know what? It's even one of these things, Caleb, that even when you have a bad boss, you should learn something from them. And I still appreciate those opportunities because ultimately that was the opportunity that said, I don't need to be here anymore, and I need to change the scenery from a career standpoint. And it's worked out for the better. That's probably the worst. One of my old Foot Locker DMs, she was really bad too, but as time went along, I look back and I don't think she was as bad. I think my old boss at Mud was terrible. Not a people manager, and that's just the way it was. And this guy, Rick, closes us off by asking, is Die Hard a Christmas movie? I can't believe this is a debate. Of course it's a Christmas movie. Why wouldn't it be a Christmas movie? Do you watch it every year around Christmas time? I know I sure do. Does it have Christmas trees and a Christmas party and all of that? Of course it does. What does that make it? A Christmas movie. And if people don't like it, they can eat shit. Die Hard is a Christmas movie, people. Period. Thanks for your questions, guys. I'll do another one of these probably next week.